The Boston Public Schools have to meet the needs of the 21st century in buildings going as far back as the 1800s. To bring the buildings up to date, Mayor Walsh is committing $1 billion over the next 10 years. There's also a new master plan that considers building conditions, educational strategies, and population. To tell us about the plan is the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the city's Education Cabinet, Ben Viner. Thank you very much for being with us, Ben.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
First of all, I want to talk with, I guess the most surprising thing here in this plan is that it was only a little more than a year ago I was hearing something about, thousands of seats worth of excess capacity, and now looking 10 years down the line, it's almost down to zero.
Yeah, so what Bill BPS did was took a much more thorough approach to measuring capacity. Along the way, what we learned is there is no universally accepted way to measure the number of seats in a school district. There's a lot of different methods. We feel really confident in what the method we use for Bill BPS, which creates a range of capacity. We decided that having one number is not a useful tool, but having this range. And the first, or the high end of the range, is what we call our current use capacity, which looks at how we use our buildings today and accepts how the kind of spaces we have in our buildings today.
When I saw a lot of schools back in the 1970s, and the standard at the time was you had something about like 6 rows of maybe 6 seats in each row or something, and they're all very tight, very rectilinear. That's a 20th century classroom. What's a 21st century classroom supposed to be like?
So a 21st century classroom can look like a lot of different things in different schools, but really it's all about shared learning. It's about adaptive spaces. It's about taking advantage of technology. In a lot of ways, it reflects the workplaces of today, where people are working more collaboratively and utilizing space differently. And we want to make sure that our schools represent the future workplaces that our students will be working in.
And I guess I can picture here, you might have one room where you might have groups of kids working at different levels, or you might have an inclusive classroom where you've got special needs kids working with other kids. So I guess that's why you have to rearrange things?
Yep, and you also look at space standards. We have some classrooms that are on the smaller side, and we want to make sure that every classroom has the appropriate space to provide all the different learning tools that are necessary in it, and that takes up even more space, which some of the prior capacity counts didn't include. What
about the conditions of the buildings? I know you've got things that go way back, but there was even buildings after World War II that are listed in poor condition too.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly why the city undertook this process of commissioning Bill BPS, is because we were hearing from students, teachers, parents, all the folks who are living and using these buildings every day, that they need some love. And so we knew that going in, and we needed to get a full comprehensive understanding of what was included in that, what that meant. And so that's why we did this. It does tell us that our buildings do need repairs. We do need renovations. We need, in some cases, to build new buildings. There's a lot of different options for how to start solving this. But the first step in the problem was gathering all of that data and putting it into a tool and a system that allows us to use it moving forward.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Ben Viner from the city's Education Cabinet. But I guess even when you keep the buildings, you've got some very expensive work. I mean, there's a story that came out about air quality problems. So you get ventilation systems, you get roofs and windows. I mean, it adds up, I guess.
Yeah. So the air quality piece specifically, we're trying to clarify this. What the assessment looked at was not the air quality effects on health. BPS already does yearly audits on the health and wellness of students in buildings. That's part of the standard operating procedure for BPS. What Bill BPS looked at is how well a learning environment is created for students. So if the air was a little bit too stuffy or too warm, too humid, that takes away from what we want learning to be, from allowing students to kind of learn at their best. And so with Bill BPS, we're able to say we want to move beyond just kind of the health standard, which obviously is of the utmost priority, but to a standard of creating the absolute best learning environments.
Well, going ahead, you want the improvements not to be administered by the school department itself, but by the city agency that's in charge of all city buildings, the public facilities department. What's the advantage of that?
So the advantage is streamlining the operation by making a $1 billion investment. That's a lot of money, and this is a large undertaking, and we want to make sure it's done right. And so by combining the facilities division of the Boston Public Schools into the PFD, which is the Public Facilities Department for the City of Boston, we're creating both financial efficiencies and operational efficiencies to make sure everybody who's working on the same scope of work is collaborating, communicating, and moving forward together, as opposed to some of the fracturing that happens by being in different departments in different locations.
Now, I gather most of the work has yet to be specified, but there are some short-term investments that the mayor has in mind.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're going to move forward with in fiscal year 18 is the creation of a 21st Century Schools Fund. And part of what the data tells us is that there's plenty of kind of more in-depth renovation, repair projects that are needed, and we will be moving forward with those. But in the meantime, we want students today to be benefiting from the data and the lessons learned in Build BPS. And one of them is that our schools don't have the 21st century tools that they could have that is separate from the structure of the building or the different structural components of the building. So we're going to move forward with making those investments across the district.
Of course, another factor in these investments is input from the community, and you've got a whole process on that. So explain, how does that work?
That's right, and we're really excited about this. Build BPS is built to be the foundation of planning and investment and implementation moving forward, and is structured in a way that the community is a key partner in prioritizing investments. And so for the next few months, we're having info sessions, town halls. Every school site council will be meeting to talk about the report, to give a better understanding of what Build BPS is and make sure everyone understands the data. And then from there, beginning in May, we're going to begin neighborhood workshops, where we'll be going to every neighborhood across the city, having conversations with people about the situations in those neighborhoods, looking at the buildings, looking at the demographic trends, and together with each neighborhood, prioritizing where we want to start and where that will take us along the way. And then every year, we'll be continuing that process so that the community is always part of the planning process moving forward.
I know you've got a dashboard with this, and there must be a website if there's a dashboard. So where do people go for that?
So buildbps.org is where you can find all of the information. It'll let you download the full PDF report, as well as interact with our data dashboard, which takes a lot of different pieces of data, and instead of presenting them in spreadsheets that not everybody can understand, creating a visualization that people can really start to use and learn from.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Ben Viner from the city's Education Cabinet. In a moment, help for immigrants concerned about new federal enforcement measures. But first, this message.